Welcome to the second edition of our live talk show for the leadcommunity.io. We're happy to have you here, and we are at the Xebia Studio with our live audience, so thank you all for joining. And we have some interesting guests at the table. But first, I want to introduce my co-host, Jethro Sloan. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure.
I should say.
I was previously the bulletin guy, and now I've been promoted to co-host, so it feels kind of good. Thank you for this opportunity. Hopefully it goes well. But looking forward to the show, and yeah.
Yeah, and talking about the show, let's kick it off. Yes, and Jethro and I are not alone. We have three amazing guests at the table. Caroline Fluit, former Global VP, Product Customer Technology from IKEA. And Mehmet Karadayi, CTO from Dexter Energy. Welcome. And Leo Kraan, Director of Developer Experience of Booking.com. So welcome. Thank you for being here. Jethro, we have prepared something.
Indeed, we have, and I think we can just dive into our first topic of the day. The first one that we wanted to discuss today was delivering value through technology, and I know, Caroline, me and you were having a conversation about this just before we joined the show. So tell me, or tell the audience and us, why are you so passionate about delivering value through technology?
Well, I think it's a practical reason and more a personal reason, and maybe I can start with my personal reason. I love being an engineer, and as an engineer you solve complex problems in an elegant way, and I love to show people that we as engineers can create a lot of value with our technology. We are not just a hobby horse or just some dudes who like coding. We can really create something amazing. And the more practical part is what I see often is that people who don't understand technology see it as a budget. So it's a budget, it should be cheap and don't bother me. And I think that that's not fair for what you could do with technology, because technology can really enable your business. So there's a personal drive and a more practical drive here.
Can you give us some examples of how technology drove value within IKEA?
Oh, where to start? I think what I always tell my teams, because I have very passionate engineers in my team, but I always tell them, please try to sell furniture, because that's what we do. You know, we don't build technology, we sell billies and Kallax, so that's what we do. So I'm always very working a lot on making sure that people understand what they are building and how it contributes to the business. And I think what for me a really big step is, for example, we build all the software for all the stores where you place your orders when you want to order a kitchen, for example. When we had an issue, when the system is down, the engineers were a bit like, okay, this is a level 2, let's try to solve it quite quickly. But then I organized a meeting where I asked the co-workers of the stores to come to my teams and tell the people what they experience when all these customers are screaming at them that they can't order their kitchen, how bad it is. It's not only bad for our business, it's bad for our experience, and it's really bad for our co-workers. And this really built a bridge between technology and the stores. So all my engineers were like, oh my God, I'm not solving this issue in a system, I'm solving a business problem. I really want to do this as fast as possible.
Yeah. So that's when it goes wrong, you feel it, or you notice it, of course. But can you also give examples of things that were really like successful? You talked about the kitchen and the configuration of that. Do you have more examples of that?
Yeah, I think another nice example is our payment process. When you order something on our website or in our app, it's quite slow. It's terribly slow. It takes a lot of time. And what we did, my payments teams, they really improved the technology and rebuilt it. And with this, we reduced the time from 180 seconds to less than a minute. And this really boosted the conversion. So that was a massive uplift in our e-commerce sales. And I think this is a nice example of improving your technology really boost your sales. And that was a great business case for me to share.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. And those are like the online activities, but could you also share some ways that you use technology in the shops or with data or with customer?
Oh my God, that's almost everywhere. I don't know how often you come in IKEA, but you see a lot of screens. So you see the kitchen planner and all the planners. There's scan and go. Maybe some people already used it. With your app, you can scan and then pay in your app.
Okay.
So that you can bypass the checkout. We also, for example, built a 3D interior design tool where you can erase your furniture. And then you can put in the IKEA furniture and really design your room. It's live in the US and UK. And then you can really easily order it. And of course, then you can do click and collect in the store. So it's there's a lot of technology in the stores. Yeah.
Great initiatives, innovation. Is it something that engineers come up with themselves? Or is it like you have like an idea box? Or how does something like that start?
Well, at IKEA there are many creative people. So we typically get a lot of input on ideas, what to build. But there's also a lot of creativity in my engineering teams. And what I like about engineers is they typically engineers solve problems and try to improve things. So there's a lot of ideas in the teams how to improve things. And then it's, for me as a leader, important that I tell my teams what the business needs are, what the challenges are in the business. And then you have the perfect combination of showing very smart people what problems to solve, and then the smart people who are solving the problems in a good way. And so this is how we do that.
Yeah, great. So it's a combination of factors, leaders who can indicate this is where the problems are, and motivated engineers who want to get the company forward.
And who get the also the opportunity to do so. You need to give people some freedom and some space to do so.
Yeah, that's nice. And I think that's also connecting to developer experience, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. The creativity often stems from just experiencing pain yourself. So, and developers have this natural tendency to want to fix things. Just this week I talked to a developer who was receiving kind of Jira tickets for problems that were coming in. But for some reason the subjects were all the same because it just said ticket from this person. He had like an inbox. And he was so fed up with that he found a way to connect it to our AI code generator and just get those tickets updated automatically with like a short summary of the actual ticket. So it's much more contextual. And then you just rolled it out and made it available to everybody. So the kind of small things that triggers people to make an improvement in how they work.
Yeah, so I think for Mehmet, I would like to ask you, having worked at a big tech, Meta, and Booking as well, and now you're working at a startup, how do you decide, we have a lot of value in technology, but how do you decide which technological strategy delivers the most sustainable value in a big organization, but also in a smaller organization like a startup?
The challenges differ, but both of all my experiences were in companies that are digital native. So like the technology itself is the business. Without the technology, there's no business. There's no value generated for the customer. The challenge between big and smaller companies is that in big companies you have a lot of resources. Henceforth, you have a lot more eyes looking into topics like developer experience, and you can spend some energy there because, like, with bigger numbers, any efficiency provided there is causing a lot of value increase in the overall business. In smaller companies, you always have this, but yes, we need to create this value for the customer, so henceforth it's a revenue coming back. Developer experience can slip in the cracks every now and then. So myself, working in closely with the platform engineering, I find this kind of battle sometimes, proving the value of actually investing in better frameworks and platforms, so that actually we can sustain the value generation going forward. One thing that we were discussing today, in small companies, it's really fluid. You need to move people in between teams because the priorities shift frequently. It's not as stable as big organizations. If you don't have a common infrastructure, if you don't have platforms, then every shift that a person needs to do in between different domains, they need to re-onboard to the technology that the team is using, if all the teams are using different things. That is, by itself, is a value, right? Like, if you have a common framework platform that your company can operate on, the same programming language, the same frameworks, the same code repository system, the same CI/CD, whatever, they can just shift their scope without thinking about the whole underlying things. So that is, in my experience, is a bit two different worlds, two different challenges kind of thing. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Caroline, how do you think that this looks for you inside of IKEA?
Well, when you were talking, it resonated really well with me because I do have the same challenges. Because people typically work in a domain, but engineers, after a while, they would like to rotate, find some new problems. And I recognize the same issues. Like, it's not easy to move people between domains because at IKEA we're not so advanced yet. We have quite some diversity, I always tell them.
Good way of putting it.
Yeah. So then it's really difficult to rotate. And we're aiming to also have a bit more generic solutions that people can easily rotate between domains, because it's also helping the developers to have more fun and more to see different problems.
I have a question again. How do you then sell that to the board who wants to see profit and value and numbers? How do you pitch a generic solution to them saying, we need this? What do you go into that meeting saying, we need to build a system that we can have the developers rotate and be happy, right? But at the end of the day, if you look at numbers, how do you really sell that to the board when they're looking for profit and revenue and sales?
I have a tactic for that, but I don't know if I can advise it to everybody. But what I typically do is don't ask it. You know, I have ownership for a part of my budget, and I make sure that I deliver really clear value. I can show that how e-commerce is going, the contribution I made, show that you can meet your roadmap and you can meet your KPIs, and then it's like, don't bother me, Caroline, just fix it. What you do with the rest of your budget. So this is a bit. I don't ask it sometimes because, you know, it's my budget. I can decide, and typically they don't really understand. But I don't know if that's a good advice to give.
Leo, how does that work for you with developer experience? Again, that's also something that you need to invest in that doesn't have a monetary value or sales around it. How does that normally work for you?
Well, the initial investment came when we had major kind of platform changes where we moved from bare metal to also adopt containers and Kubernetes. And then there was kind of a real business value behind that because we needed to start building multiple travel products. So we needed to move to more service domain besides kind of the single monolith that we had. So there was kind of the business need really justified investment in technology. But then we did have to come up with a clear story like, investing in Kubernetes, but then you also need to invest in deployment tooling and maybe different language frameworks. So that did require selling. In a way, kind of with tooling, that the metrics that we had are valuable now. So that helps us to justify where we had pain points in our current deployment process, and that helped then to sell. But if we change tooling, it'll gain development hours saved, it'll increase certain velocity in a certain way, to allow us to respond faster with rollbacks. So that we do need to link it to concrete metrics in order to be able to justify any investment.
Yep. Great. So I think our next question here would be then, what is the true value of technology and how do we convince the business of it? Would you like to start with this one, Mehmet?
I was thinking about how I got into the technology and programming when Caroline was mentioning. It feels like magic. Nowadays it feels more like a magic than before with all AI developments. But at the end of the day, business is for business. You need to create value and generate revenue for the company. And I'm a strong believer of having a hypothesis and either validating or invalidating
Invalidating, yeah.
the hypothesis. And right now, the environment that I'm in, super pragmatic, really fast moving, and it's like a no bullshit environment. So that's the technique that I'm using. Storytelling, obviously everything starts with storytelling, as Leo was saying. You need to have a compelling story, a good narrative to kickstart it. Then I come up with a set of hypotheses, and those hypotheses are connected to the metrics that are important for the business. And I just try to come up with some tests to show if those metrics are moved or not under these circumstances. If you can make that kind of correlation, causation clear to the leadership, even though non-technical people, just business-oriented, finance-oriented people will understand what's happening and how you're moving the things under the hood, where the technology comes in.
So it's a story, and if you're able to sell it as a compelling story to the business, they will hopefully value the technology,
story, right? Like show the story is aligned with the truth. In reality.
Yeah, and so if you look at a lot of organizations, for instance, ING has been saying for years, we're not a bank, we're a technology company. We have Domino's Pizza saying we're not a pizza delivery organization, we're a data and tech organization. They really value technology. How do you see that in a more traditional environment where you sell furniture, other than being digital native? How do you see the value, or how do you tell that technology has value to your business, or how do you convince your business maybe?
That's a very important part of the job, and I think it's a bit similar to what you said. It's a lot of storytelling, because typically people who sell furniture are not so interested in technology, but if you can explain to them how you can help, how you can contribute, it already helps. And what I've also noticed in the storytelling is that it's not me who tells the story, but I always ask a lot of people in my teams to tell the story. And when there's a passionate engineer who tells what has been developed and how it works, that really helps the people to grasp it, like, oh, this is how you contribute. And the other thing, what I also do is also to try to measure a lot of things, to make it more, that people understand the impact of things. And I was just telling you before the show, for example, we have some tech debt, some legacy at IKEA, a little bit. So, and for one system, for example, together with the team, we decided, okay, let's show the people how many incidents we had in a quarter and how many hours it took for all the engineers to solve all the incidents. People were shocked.
People as business?
Okay. And then they're like, so the people outside of technology were shocked, like, oh, does it take so much time to run and operate? I said, yes. And can you imagine if we improve this, if we strengthen this system, we can use these hours to innovate. And that helps to people to understand why it's important to innovate, take care of your tech debt, that you can focus on the new tools to support the business.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is also about creating transparency on what legacy or what technical debt you have, and then maybe translating that in for something that business understands, which is money.
Money.
So as bringing that to the surface, and that probably ignites or stimulates the business to think about, hey, we could use that money better than just having to fix the technical debt, or to solve the technical debt. We could spend the money on innovation. Not instead. It's not instead of fixing technical debt. We could do innovation, but if you care for the technical debt, then you have more money for the innovation.
And you have something else. Your developers are happier because they don't like solving issues every day.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
And how big of a part, Leo, how big a part is developer happiness and developer experience?
Well, it's kind of critical in a way. Of course, developers, the experience is for a big part happiness. It's not only about kind of the DORA metrics, if they release fast and if it's good quality. If you only look at that, then you're optimizing potentially the wrong things. So you really need to understand how developers feel about their job, like what are the things that they like, that they don't like. Because that gives you insights that go beyond kind of the hard metrics that you can capture. We only recently started running kind of more qualitative, capturing qualitative insights through like survey methods. Definitely gave some good insights on the things that we were not optimizing for, that are outside kind of my direct domain of kind of the developer environment, but are critical to developer experience, like things related to like focus work and things related to documentation, clarity of requirements. Those are all things that impact their daily job that you're not automatically looking at when you focus really on kind of developer experience purely from a tooling and a quantitative metric point of view.
Yeah, interesting to hear. Yeah, didn't really think about documentation as being part of that, but
probably in every company that's a bit big pain point. Yeah,
indeed. So yeah, we've discussed this a little bit, and I think in the industry at the moment. So the next statement we have is that platform teams are the new buzzword. I think we've heard it 4 or 5 times already at this table, but they've become vital in everyday operations. What do you think about this statement, Mehmet?
As I mentioned before, I totally agree. There are a lot of values of having, first of all, reinventing the wheel is not a good practice. There are certain times that you need to move fast, and then it is a good practice in those times where you have really cross-functional teams that build A to Z everything by themselves and move really fast. But then in the lifetime of a company, a point comes where you want to start a new product. Guess what? We need to do everything all over again. It is not feasible anymore. So I had a really nice experience in my tenure in Meta, now known as Facebook, now known as Meta. For instance, machine learning infrastructure was standardized. Every team was using the same infrastructure. People were speaking in the same language. A lot of internal community was built. A lot of features that other teams were using. It was well cataloged and you can use. It was saving a lot of time to innovate. Like, you don't think about how this is being run, how many machines in the server silo is being used. Do I need to care about the memory, CPU, or how do I access the data? All the things are abstracted for you, and you just focus on value generation.
Yep.
And this is the core value proposition of platforms, I think. You just abstract it away, no cognitive load for the developers. That cognitive capacity is being used to deliver value.
Great. Do you find that Amazon not Amazon, but they pioneered it quite a lot, was the you build it, you own it, you run it mentality? Do you find that this works well with platform, or do you think platform teams are a little bit different because some part of your operation is offset to a different team? How do you find that works?
Sometimes it creates some friction. In Amazon case, when you think about AWS, right, like they built the platform with the idea of that reducing the cognitive load and reducing the friction. Then it became a product that a lot of people in the world, in the industries, is being using. But then I assume that at the initial stages where when the CEO came and says every team needs to build everything through APIs, there was a friction and a lot of pushback at that time. And I'm now facing a similar pushback in my stage, right? But eventually everything being connected, everything has an API, enabled Amazon to turn it into a service which is now bringing them billions of dollars in return. And enabling a lot of small businesses to kickstart their software business on top of. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. I think it also leads into the next question, which is like, how do you make sure that your platform teams are working with and delivering value to the developers? Because sometimes I've seen that the platform teams say this is what the developers need without actually asking the developers, is this what you need? And then you have this disparity between, we don't want to use it because it doesn't really service our needs, and the platform team's like, oh no, we're delivering all this value, and you get this real difference in opinion about the platform. So how do you make sure that when you're working with the platform team, that they're communicating with the developers and making sure that they're in line with what's needed for the organization?
I think platform teams being developers by themselves, being like putting themselves into the customer's shoes is helping, but I totally see the problem is still there. And Short answer, we're also using a similar platform to get qualitative metrics, but being a small company, it allows us to have really irregular chats, coffee chats and water cooler kind of chats. And I'm just encouraging my teams to talk to people, because at our scale, it is doable.
Yeah.
One-on-one communication is still possible in anything, right? Like, I have a problem like this. How can I solve? I'm thinking about building something like this. Would this be helpful? We can have these conversations. At the scale that is not possible, I think these platforms, back in Meta, we didn't have, we had an internal tool, and we, like, as a developer, I was getting a lot of surveys for a lot of tools that I was using. And I didn't see them as a burden on me, because these surveys, I knew that they were helping me prioritizing what would help me.
Yep. Yeah, at one of the clients that I'm working at the moment, there's 2 platform teams that I need to work with. The one platform team makes decisions and says what we should be using, and the other platform teams works very well with us. And I think the main difference for me is transparency and communication. So the one platform team involves us in their retros. We're along for the journey. We can communicate to the platform team at any moment. They're available on Teams for discussion. And the other one is very much kind of feels like an ivory tower situation where they're telling us what to do and there's no real communication between the 2 teams. Do you find that this helps communication and transparency in the 2 teams?
Exactly. The transparency is the key. And yeah, let's think from a Scrum perspective, right? Like, there are reviews where you can invite your customers and show what you did in the previous cycle, right? We do the similar thing with developers. It's easier to get them into the room. And every time that they see, they can also challenge if they don't see the value of what we're doing. And that is like communication and transparency, as you put it. There are multiple ways of doing it, but we're just human. We just need to understand what others are working on and have a good communication with each other. I think this is the case. This is applicable for this case as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
I heard you, Leo. You responded when Jethro said there's a platform team who tells us what to do.
Yeah.
Do you recognize that? Or
I definitely do. I do think also what you said, that right now you can still talk to everybody. At some point, that doesn't scale anymore. But no, you definitely can. The ivory tower approach, that'll get shut down very quickly. Because of course, developers, especially if they're internal, if you're your direct colleagues, their opinion, they're good customers. They'll tell you very straight, if that makes sense or not, and if they're unhappy with what you're providing. Ultimately, I do think it needs to be somebody's job. At booking scale, we can't talk to all individual developers like one by one. I mean, we have to use kind of methods either to survey them, but it should be somebody's job at the end of the day. I think like a good product team helps with that. I definitely see that helped us a lot to have product managers in our developer experience track to really look after specific topics, because you need to create that continuous feedback loop with the internal customers. And even internally, you can segment them out in all different kinds of areas for different types of workloads or different business products. And I find that absolutely critical. You need to have kind of a really strict customer focus internally to make sure that you have that feedback loop, that all the different insights are captured, both qualitative and quantitative. You play that back to them, really like, okay, so we interpret this is what you want. And really make them part of your development cycle for early adoption, get continuous feedback. So at some point we need to make decisions, but ideally we do it kind of in collaboration with our internal customers.
Yeah. So then, Caroline, we've been speaking a lot about strategy, about speaking to business. Then how do you ensure that non-product facing teams get strategic priority to deliver value?
Yeah, I think I recognize what you're saying a lot. So also within IKEA, we have several platform teams. And I think one of my best buddies here are the architects, because they really help me to show what the value is of a platform and also why it's a priority. But it was also a very big dilemma for me, because I saw this platform team who was really enthusiastic and passionate to build this developer portal. But on the other side, I saw all my engineers who were like, I don't want them to set the standards. Go away. I just want to do my own thing. So I saw people who all had good intentions, but just didn't speak the same language. And I think standards are really important, but I think sometimes it's a bit too black and white. Then it's going to be this ivory tower, this is the standard, you shall not deviate. And I truly believe a standard is a guideline, but if you have a good reason, you could deviate, but it's your own responsibility. So what we did in our teams is that for every subdomain, we have appointed principals. These principals had the responsibility to discuss the standards, to set the standards, but they were also something like a board. If you want to deviate, go to your principal and explain why. And if the principal and engineer said, that's a good reason, you could deviate. And I saw that this was a better way to talk about standards, because standards sounds, I get very irritated if I hear it. And this way it was more like guidelines, like how do we work here? But there is space there's room for discussion. It's not an ivory tower, because we set the standards together. We own it. And I think that really helped to get a bit less diversity within IKEA. So that was good, and a bit more happiness. And that the developer portal started to be used.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. All right. Then we jump to our next topic, which is developer productivity or developer experience. We've touched on this quite a bit so far, and I think this one, again, we're speaking about focusing on profit and value. But Leo, what do you think about the statement of focusing on developer experience yields better results than focusing on profits?
Why not focus on both? Yeah. I think one leads to the other, like focus on developer experience. On one hand, makes your developers happier, makes them more productive in a way. It does help. The goal should always be to kind of take friction out of their daily work, out of their daily workflow, out of their developer life in a way. And that should result in higher productivity, that you have either be able to deliver more or the quality improves. Ultimately, of course, assuming you focus on the right things that are developed, that should lead to better business results. So I think it's kind of through making your developers happier and more productive, you reach that higher profit.
Yeah, that's good to know. You actually mentioned developer happiness, and I'm wondering, seems like you've done some research into what makes developers happy, so I'd love to know, maybe it's specific only to booking or not, but for you, what really makes developers happy?
Well, we definitely haven't cracked that code yet. There's so many things that feed into this that are way outside also kind of the developer life domain. But definitely, of course, developers join Booking because they want to work on travel products. They want to solve those problems. So giving them the opportunity to focus as much of their time on that'll get them towards at least happiness in their development life. So that then you need to start looking at, what is the right tools for the job, the right workflows, how does the work that they need to do, how we can enable that the best, how can we unlock their innovations, also make the right data available when needed. So kind of streamlining their work and take kind of friction out of it, that does play for a big part also in their happiness. If they're happy on how they develop, that goes a long way, of course. They need to have a good lunch too and all the other things, but that's outside my space.
Very
I'm a poor
important.
cook.
Yeah. So what I hear you say is if developers or engineers have a connection to the product that they're building, like they have a connect to the purpose that you're trying to achieve, that helps. And other than that, it's the tools and the environments that make them able to do development in an easy or smooth way. Yeah. So I think that's also, those are two factors. And I've heard you say fun and happiness a few times. How important is fun, or how important is fun for engineers? Or can you give an example of what worked for your team with regards to fun?
Well, I first wanted to react to what you said. I fully agree with you. This happiness of the engineers is really to the purpose-driven, and that you know what you're working on. But also if you look a little bit further away, when you zoom out, it's very expensive when a developer leaves. You need to find a new one and onboard this person. A lot of knowledge leaves. You lose a lot of velocity. That's also a business case that you can show. It's extremely important to keep our people in and happy, because finding a good engineer is really hard. They're very valuable people. So that's why it's extremely important to keep your people happy and also make sure that they have fun. And fun is a great way to build a team, get to know each other better, and have trust. And when I started at IKEA, there were several domains, and what I saw is that my leaders were all working in their subdomains, and they barely had any contact with each other. So they didn't know what other domains were building. And then I said to my team, let's have a gathering of the directors and the engineering managers all in Sweden. And they were all like, Caroline, that's a lot of money, and you know how much time that takes, and blah, blah, blah. But I pushed through, and they all came to Sweden, and we had 2 days where people were presenting what they were building. And it was funny because it was an epiphany for a lot of people, like, oh, they're working on the same things as we do. Oh, I have a lot of people who, hey, we have a lot of great people around here with whom I can collaborate. And also in the evening, we just had a beer, and we did a jeu de boule. And then they were standing around me and hugging me and said, Caroline, thank you that we are allowed to have fun again.
Yeah.
Because engineers are all just people who want to have fun in their jobs. And I think that was a great step up in the team, just to have also make sure that let's also have a nice time together.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the 5 days of working is very long.
Yeah. And doing stuff together, doing fun stuff together helps to build trust and that camaraderie.
And quizzes,
feeling.
Quizzes work excellent.
Quizzes, yeah. Do you think the hybrid working or working from home has had an impact on how much you feel connected to your team members or to the purpose, maybe even?
Topic. From my perspective, again, going into the human level of thinking, we need to see each other to build trust. And trust is a really key part of collaboration we do. If you give people chances to build that trust, from that point on, I think anybody can work from anywhere. If you don't take that into consideration and everybody starts working from somewhere and never had the chance to build the human-to-human trust level, in my experience, it breaks at some point. So I like having the freedom working from anywhere, but I also like the chance of knowing the people that I'm collaborating with and trusting them. If a company can have both of them, for instance, some of the well-known remote-only companies, they do 2 times a year gathering, everyone in the same place, 2 weeks. A lot of games, a lot of talks, a lot of chance to get to know each other and build that trust. Then everybody goes away and do their work. And they've been doing this far before COVID. So it's been working for them, right? But there are some companies, you just start from day one, they send you a laptop in your room, join the meeting through whatever platform that you're using, and never have the chance to see other colleagues. Then I believe I would be miserable in that situation. So, I think hybrid is the key.
Hybrid is the key. How is that at Booking?
It's hybrid. We definitely have a mix. We do see a lot of people coming back for certain gatherings, so that makes sense. Also, managers, I think they will find their way in their team. Like, when does it make sense to come to the office? I do see the challenge of kind of keeping a certain engineering culture, especially with colleagues maybe who joined during COVID. Like, it's really hard to onboard in a specific culture if you're always working remote, because you do need to have that kind of the in-person contact. It's hard to convey that if you're only working remote, and if your company is also like adapting to this at the same time. So I definitely see a need for, if you have a hybrid approach, then I do see a need for having really set moments when you're all in the office, especially for certain meetings, like a brainstorm with like more than 3 people over Zoom. That's just disaster. There's no way to do that right. So I think there's certain things that just don't work.
If I can tap into, I think also as a leader with your people, with the people who report to you, you also need to pay extra attention and energy to make sure how are they doing. And you can meet sometimes face to face, but you can't meet every week sometimes face to face. So it's important to put some extra time and sometimes just a bit longer calls and just talk not only about work, but just how are you doing? How is it going at home? To really make sure what's the temperature of my people. And because sometimes in all these big meetings, otherwise you lose your people.
Yeah. So it's also about the personal connection and getting that attention from your leader and knowing that you matter as an employee.
Yeah. For example, sometimes we had difficult discussions, and then after this meeting, I would always call my leader, like, "Hey, how are you doing? This went well. This didn't go well. How did you feel about that? Don't bother about it. You know, just to make sure to check in and not just leave the meeting and then." Somebody is sitting at home and thinks, okay, what would the other think? And I think it's nice just to have a small check-in. It could be a few minutes, you know. You don't need to talk a full hour, but make sure check in with your people. Yeah.
And I think that also contributes to developer experience, right? If you have that you're not just a person behind a laptop working from home, but somebody cares and someone is interested in you, wants to connect with you. I think that connects to developer experience.
Yep, I really like what you said, Caroline, because I was going to mention that before we were all working in the office and we saw that as just the norm, right? We didn't really assess it. Was it a tool that we could use to achieve something? It was just, you go to the office and you just accept that that's the case. But nowadays, obviously, without the office, you can see there's a lack of human interaction, and that's a negative, right? But we didn't think about that when COVID first hit, everyone working from home. Oh, this is great. But then a couple months down the line, you were like, hold on, I kind of miss my colleagues, or I'm struggling to connect with some of my new colleagues, for instance, like you said, Leo. And I think nowadays, what are we doing to make sure, so the company that you mentioned, Mehmet, about getting everyone together, before COVID, they were already doing this. I think they identified that those human interaction moments are very important for the company. And if you are having a hybrid environment or completely work from home environment, what are you doing to make sure that you're still achieving that level of interaction inside of your team? So what do you guys do in terms of that for your team at IKEA, for instance? Did you have moments that you would be together? Myself, at my client, we meet once a week in the office. All of us always meet once a week in the office, and we really sit in the same room and discuss topics that are hard to discuss. Did you find something similar worked for you at IKEA, or?
Yeah, so my team is in different locations. So it's in Sweden, in Amsterdam, and Madrid. So what we typically did is once per month we would meet with the leaders for 2 days, and then we looked at how are the results going, the progress, review the strategy, and in the evening always had a dinner. So it's a combination of content and also the fun part for the collaboration. That was once per month, and then every quarter. All my leaders and the engineering managers would come together, because that's 80 people. You know, I couldn't do that every month. I do have a budget, so but so we did that every quarter, and that gave a rhythm to really see each other. But this was the engineering part, and at IKEA we work with product engineering, data and UX teams, so PEDX teams. So we also had meetups with PEDX. So you had a functional meetup with your engineering teams, and you had your PEDX team, where you collaborate on the solutions you build, and those were also very, very valuable, because there you had the true discussion from the product people with the data and engineering UX. What are we developing, and are we doing the right things? Hey, why is it taking so long at engineering? That was typically the question, and sitting together and discussing this really solved a lot of problems. So the hybrid working was quite intense, because you had your PEDX teams and your functional teams, but it was really important to make sure that we were doing the right things and that the people were very happy.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great example of bringing people together. I do think it's difficult to quantify how much better it gets after you have met, or how much it has contributed to your collaboration. Did you have any issues making the business case, or how did you prove that the team was doing better afterwards or during?
I don't know if I'm a good example, but it was my budget, so I just went to my controller and told him, make sure we have some budget. And what I did tell people about the happiness in my team. We had a really good engagement score. And I told the HR people, look, this is what we do to keep our people happy, and this is the engagement score. We had the highest score.
Yeah.
And then I didn't get any discussions.
Yeah.
So don't ask, just do it and show the results.
Yeah. And it could
I
also
don't know if that's a wise advice.
yeah, also maybe if little people leave or you have a low, how do you call it, throughput? No, not throughput. Yeah,
Retention.
high retention. Yeah, that could be an example of, hey, what we're doing has had results. Do you do anything like that at Booking.com?
We do track engagement.
Track engagement?
But how that directly correlates to kind of the fun things we do, it's hard to really isolate that, because engagement ties into a lot of different things. We definitely do motivate our managers to do like quarterly events with their team. They get a budget for that. My leadership team, we just coordinate which days we go to the office, and we kind of certain meetings, we just make an effort of just doing that in person. And we have like things like all hands, those type of events. We definitely make an effort of also doing that in the office. Always have something fun also afterwards, not just pure there for business, but kind of lure them in with something fun. That also always helps. I do think all those things over time, they contribute to just a healthy environment and just good high engagement. I think it is, that's part of our culture, that we want to have that closeness in teams, that the teams really operate together. It's not, operate as their own small company with their own mission and their own freedom. Yeah, we do believe that, and I'm firmly behind that. Yeah, you need to have the personal connection, and it goes beyond just your work meetings. You need to know each other personally.
Yep.
And you need to get together for that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Yeah, Mehmet, I'm also interested from your side, having worked at a large tech and then in a startup. How is it different in the two organizations, right? Because Facebook, I can imagine, is all over the entire world, lots of teams everywhere, whereas the startup is more localized. So what does that look like for you? Do you have work from home environments, or do you have hybrid? What kind of works for you in your current structure?
I used to travel a lot in that job, because like we had projects that we were doing in Seattle, so Kickstarter project, let's go to Seattle. Some projects in other parts of the world. Just before COVID came in and lockdowns happened, I was planning to go to Singapore at some point, but after that, the realities changed. Obviously, in being in one headquarters, one office, everybody comes to there, makes it much simpler. And to add to the point of fun things to do, I really like having one-on-ones while playing either pool, table tennis, or foosball. A lot of interesting conversations happen when you're playing games with your reports. And I'm a bit competitive person. They also see another side of me. Sometimes fun, sometimes not. But everyone being in allows me to have these kind of moments with my team in a more sustainable way. Otherwise, it's too costly and not good for environment, because we were traveling a lot.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned the pool example, because I was communicating with the platform team, the really good platform team, and they have two people named Pavel in their team. So I asked them, how in your team do you differentiate between the two Pavels? And they came with the idea of playing a match of pool between the two, and whoever won the pool match became Pavel 1, and whoever lost became Pavel 2. And I thought that was a really interesting way for them to decide that.
There's interesting. Our infrastructure team also likes to play pool. Maybe there's something about
maybe.
Platform teams.
Yeah. Okay, I think that brings us to our next. I think this is quite an important question, and I would like to ask all the panel participants today what they would find as their most important aspect of developer experience. And I'm wondering if we have the same idea or if there's different ideas. But yeah, let's start with. I think, Leo, we can start with you. What do you think is the most important aspect?
Select one.
Yeah. He was
Only
looking.
one,
He was looking around like he didn't want to be asked the question, so I thought he's the perfect person to ask.
Obvious
the
one
question.
would be to say quantitative and qualitative metrics, but I'm not going to say that, although I just did. I think limiting choice, which is a very unpopular opinion sometimes, because developers like to have choice, freedom in tools, languages, everything. But at the end of the day, I think a good developer experience, you create that by having kind of a limited set, but very well supported tools, workflows, processes, templates, golden paths, call it what you want. So I think ultimately that developers get the most benefit out of really a great experience, even if that means there's limits. So limit of choice would be my number 2.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I think you mentioned earlier, Mehmet, about platform teams take away a lot of the
Cognitive load.
cognitive load
Yeah.
and decisions they needed to make, and let the developers really focus on delivering value. And I think that that's really important.
Yeah.
What about at IKEA, Caroline? What do you think is the most important thing of the developer experience?
Yeah, I was. It's not a single word, but I think it's the continuous improvement of more fluid standards. So it's what you say. That's really clear. Okay, suppose you start working at IKEA. This is how we work. That's easy. Now I can easily onboard and start doing my job. But it's not so rigid, like, okay, this is how you work, and don't think, just do your thing. Like, okay, if I see something smarter, we can change it, there is room to deviate, and also we always try to keep improving how we work. So it's almost a contradiction in terms, but it's really the fluid standards, that you can have an easy landing and can focus on the most important part, that's solving the problem.
Yeah. At least you have standards then. That's fluid.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It sounds really weird, but
Yeah. Got it.
Mehmet, what about you?
So I recently read a paper that influenced me a lot, and it was basically dividing developer experience into 3 sections. Cognitive load is one of them. Feedback cycle was another part of it, because as again, developer experience, human experience, they're the same. We're in a sense, right? You want to act on something and you want to see the effect of what you did. Is it a good thing or bad thing? If it takes like half an hour for you to understand if you did the right thing, then that half an hour becomes like a hellish moment, right? Like you run something and just wait, and then you go on something else, your mind wanders. You just want to see, you need to see the effect of what you've done. So the shorter the time, that's better. And the other one was flow, being in flow. And I believe flow, like shortening the feedback cycles, is a key aspect of flow in the core. And when I look into my past, the happiest moments that I remember in my career, I knew what I need to do. I was acting on things. I was seeing the effect on the metrics, and that was a vicious cycle, right? Like that self-supporting cycle, in a sense. And I was doing it day after day, and it was just so. I was so happy by just doing that.
Yeah.
And I think we need to create more moments like this for our teams and for developers. And I think eventually that is the good developer experience.
Yeah, indeed. I think in the last lead meetup, you gave a talk about flow, which I really liked. It resonated a lot with me as well, because I'm the happiest time when you're coding away. You have all your clear requirements. You know what you need to deliver, and you can just get stuck in. Those are often the moments those are some of the best times, right?
Yeah.
Indeed. I think for myself, with the developer experience, Google did a study, Project Aristotle, which they basically looked at all their teams and what made them successful. And there's a lot of things that they found. I won't go into it now, but one of the major things was purpose, right? And I think that also ties in with what we were saying now, because everyone wants to feel fulfilled, and their work that they do has a purpose, and they're achieving something. And I think that that's really, for me, really important as an engineer, is that what you're doing actually matters, not only to yourself, to your team, but also to the company and to the end user. Having that journey of feeling like, wow, I'm doing something that actually makes a difference, and it's not just some medial work that doesn't really matter. I think that that's a vital part of developer experience.
Well put.
And ideally, it also means something to the world.
Yeah, exactly. Not just to yourself, but also to the world outside, yes.
It's a bit the way you described it. It's like little shots of dopamine every time you're improving, and it's working.
What's happening.
Yeah, that's
Exactly,
what's happening.
and then it also contributes to this great purpose. That's just little shots of dopamine. It makes you just happy.
Yeah, nothing feels better than working on a feature for a month and then you seeing it get released and launched. That's an amazing feeling as an engineer, for sure.
And then it fails. But then you have a reason to improve.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, I guess we can go back to the stakeholders and the board again, but how can we encourage the stakeholders to invest in DevX? And I think, Leo, you've probably been on this journey a little bit and you got some budget to invest in this, so how did that go for you? What did you do?
Touched on this, I think, all of us at some point already. It really comes down to building that clear business case. Ultimately, it needs to the investment needs to connect to what the business wants to accomplish. So with booking technology is an enabler. Really important for us is that we can kind of, especially the journey we're on now, like develop new travel products fast and kind of iterate on them. It's kind of in our DNA. Like we've gotten to this size now through a lot of experimentation by kind of going fast, kind of get something out there, get data, get learnings, and then iterate. So kind of the investment in developer experience, we're really geared towards supporting kind of that core way of working, because there were clear signals that in certain parts kind of we weren't going as fast as we could, or the quality was maybe hindering. In other case that we have now, because we're moving to AWS, public cloud adoption, like we can only make that successful if we provide a really streamlined, frictionless experience there. So kind of that narrative, like what do we need to invest in developer experience in order to support kind of the core way of working? That is what works best.
I see you nodding your head, Caroline. Can you elaborate further on that? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's exactly the way how to do it, because your team is a workforce that delivers solutions and builds products. And if you show that workforce is really collaborating really well and has a lot of shots of dopamine, you just see that people are happier, less sick. They don't leave. More problems are being solved. The collaboration is better. You see it in many ways, and that's a business case. You don't need to look a lot for new people, or less times at least. The output is better, the engagement is good, the sickness is lower. So it's a combination where you can show that's a really good investment. But that's, as a person, it makes me happy. One of my biggest missions now is I would like to be the leader who I would have liked to had when I was 20. Somebody who gets at least what we're doing and really cares about me, that I can do my job, that I have a purpose, that I can improve, that there are some standards, but I can also influence. So that it's also a personal mission to do this.
Yeah. And continuous improvement. I also heard you about continuous learning and giving your engineers and your employees the opportunity to learn. Can you share something about that? How you encourage that, or the learning?
In the domain of developer experience or platform teams, or like?
Yeah, for developer experience. So how do you stimulate learning and continuous improvement, and how important do you think that is?
So what we have, which I really like, is we have something called Learning and Development Day. It's like one Friday in a month. Just nobody has anything in their agenda. We have nice food in the office, which Leo mentioned is important to gather people around. And everybody works on a topic that is interesting for them. It might be a new research idea. It might be something. Nowadays, a lot of people are experimenting with LLMs. Obviously, it's happening also in small world of startups, not only in big tech. But then the fun part is we have lightning talks. People show off what they've been accomplished in either that Learning and Development Day or in the last couple of Learning and Development Days. One interesting thing was one of the managers created an artificial version of a quantitative trader we have in the company. It's called Leonard GPT. And so basically that bot was going into the energy. We're working in energy markets, right? Any change in energy market is quite important because it changes the market. So it was going through the news in the countries that we're working, and gathering all the news, and it was saying it's a positive change, it's a negative change, and then be careful about it. Yeah. Because the person doing it is not that easy, looking after all the markets and news and stuff. So that came out from Learning and Development Day, and it is a learning journey. Yep. And these kind of small things can turn into a product itself or a business case itself, or just can be a fun day hacking things. Yeah. Hacking things is fun, especially for developers, right? Like.
Yeah. So it comes back to fun again, and you've talked about food, and I think for us it's also time for some food.
I think we have the roundtables first and then some food.
Oh, roundtables first and then
But
Yeah,
that's
if-
fun.
if
So
we-
we start
if-
with
Yeah.
fun and then
Yeah.
the food.
If we give the
It's
food early, then people might eat the food and not do the round table. So
Yes,
Gotta
that's
keep them with
that
the
was
food.
it. Yeah.
We will have food for thought.
Yeah,
Food for thought.
Yeah,
Enough
yeah.
food for thought. Yeah.
Wow.
So I think we are closing our talk show, and I want to do that with an announcement that I promised during our seminar. During a seminar, we had interesting talks of all kinds of keynote speakers, and people came from different organizations, tech leaders, and people left a message or a learning. So I'm going to share the learning that won a prize, and it's on my phone, so I'm not WhatsApping or something, but it's over here. It's a picture. We had the one picked out: cleaning up shit makes you move much faster. Rob, if you recognize this message that you have written down, you have won access to our next seminar, which is on September 18th in Amsterdam. It will be hosted by Lawrence. And the fun thing is that we will open a call for papers very soon. So you can submit your session if you also want to be on stage in the leadcommunity.io seminar. So that is September 18th. Mark your calendars. There will be a call for papers. And well, we hope you all can join. Yes?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I don't have anything else. Do you have anything to share?
No, I don't think I have anything to share, but I would like to ask our panel if they have any final thoughts they'd like to share, maybe something they were thinking about during the talk that they would like to share with the audience.
I think we shared a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Drawing
shared
a
it.
blank. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no, then thank you guys for joining us. I think we really had a
Thanks
nice
for
chat.
having
And
Thanks for having us.
Thank you
Good
for
job,
having
yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Thank you.